Tesla's an enigma. Nobody knows anything about Tesla. I don't even think Tesla knew about Tesla. So at any rate, because he's an enigma, you can attribute anything you want to the name of Tesla and make your own fantasy out of it. The most notable in that was Tom Bearden. That twisted the whole thing into a complete mess, created this giant, fantastic conspiracy that, that everybody rallied around. And it did a very effective job of making it impossible to understand how Tesla's stuff worked, which is actually basic.
Well, what's the conspiracy about Tesla? What sort of thing?
Oh, the Soviets had the Tesla scalar beam and all this and that, and the HARP weather modification, and all that stuff, just pure garbage.
Yeah.
Pure garbage.
Yeah. And you just looked at
Well,
that.
that's my world.
Yeah. So you're
I mean, with these things, I live in the ionosphere.
Yeah.
I know what the sun is doing every day. I know what the ionosphere is doing. I know what everything's doing because I'm part of it. I live outside, and I have an advanced sensory system where I can pick up the stuff that normally only the animals can pick up.
Could you explain a bit about your theories without being incredibly scientific, because I would probably just misinterpret them?
Well, it's not my theories. It's
It's
the theories that have been established by, the giants in this area.
Yeah.
And what I've done is most of them didn't finish. There's a lot of conflicts. The physicists got in and mucked everything up.
Why the physicists?
They do that. They are the enemies of electricity.
Okay.
In the mind of the physicists, electricity does not exist.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, electricity in general is despised. So that's one of the complications I have, is I always approach stuff from an electrical standpoint, and physics does not allow that.
Okay.
It's not allowed. Well, I had discovered Tesla's transmission system on my own, not knowing Tesla.
Okay. And what
via RCA.
Oh. And what is Tesla's transmission?
His telluric transmitter, what he was going to do at Wardenclyffe.
And what would that do?
That was to transmit signals through the Earth to other parts of the world.
Okay.
With the eventual goal of power transmission.
Okay, so you could be like in Sydney, Australia, and they could transmit up to London, England.
Yeah, they didn't have any of that back then.
No.
There was no radio. Tesla was inventing the radio.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So Tesla's system uses a different type of electricity than's in use today. So you could say that that's my theory. Tesla never gave a theoretical base for. You want to go inside and sit down instead of standing out here? Yeah, let's do that. I built a giant laboratory in San Francisco with about 25,000 pounds of equipment that RCA gave me, which of course was promptly destroyed, and all the equipment was lost, such as always in my life.
Who destroyed it?
Real estate action. That's how I lost landers.
Okay.
Plus, there's other forces that made sure the lander station got destroyed too.
Yeah. Who are these other forces, do you believe?
Well, I really want someone to figure that out for me. In fact, if I was rich, I would just find some FBI or CIA guy that wanted to do some moonlighting, and I'd pay him about $4,000 an hour to write a book about me. But it's definitely a group. And they have assaulted me before and told me to my face that they are an organized group. And when I push hard enough, because I'm pretty tough to deal with.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
You're not a person to be easily riled, and you don't want to be.
No.
But so who was this?
Sneaky too.
Yeah, sneaky.
Yeah.
So watch your back.
You better have eyes on your back.
Yeah. So a person came to you and said, "We know what you're doing. We don't like it."
Yeah, it was up there in Bolinas.
Yeah. But at any point you thought, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, or is it?
Well, I can't help myself. Just like you can't tell.
Yeah. You're born to do it.
What are you going to do? You can't tell. Something that does something. You can't tell a squirrel not to eat pine cones. It's not going to work. It's not going to hear what you're saying. It's just going to keep doing it.
But what are the implications of your experiments? Because there must be some implication with your experiment that it's pissing people off, and they don't want you continuing.
I think it's because it's completely iconoclastic to the whole Einstein idea of the universe.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's what it is. There's real heavy racial elements involved.
Yeah.
Of racial hate.
Yeah.
Also, that are involved in this.
Yeah.
That are, they've caused a lot of problems on this planet and still are causing problems on this planet.
Yeah.
And I end up in the middle of that.
So it's an ongoing sort of conflict that you've kind of wandered into.
Yeah, it's just I'm the guy that, ended up in the wrong place.
So forgive my ignorance, and please don't punch me in the face if I ask this question.
Yeah.
Is it about free energy? Because that's what I kept hearing and reading and people seeing.
That's an obsession in people's minds.
Yeah.
It's free energy. If mankind had free energy, it'd burn up the planet.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So
Burn up the planet.
yeah.
So Tesla's technology was leading to a technology that didn't use energy.
Okay.
Something else.
The ether thing.
Well, it's not defined.
Yeah.
Because we don't fully understand it, but energy was always recycled in Tesla's system. So Tesla used power, and he didn't use energy. That's where his situation was going. And Tesla always felt that there's enough potential energy in just the cosmic movement of the Earth, which, if you think about it, is massive.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, right now, anything sitting in this room, like this pen, is moving through space at,
23,000
maybe an eighth of a million miles an hour when you add up all the movements, and there's movements you don't even know about. And it doesn't matter if Einstein says there's no movement, it's all relative. It's still moving.
Yeah.
If you stop it, if this pen was to fall off the train, it would probably, blow up half the state of Nevada.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Tesla's thing is the energy is right there.
So the Earth
right there.
The Earth creates the energy, and anything, you can tap into it if you're doing it the right way.
But the thing is, how do you find that point of reference? In other words, where is the ground?
Yeah.
Where do you throw your anchor overboard to latch on? That's the question. That's in physical theory. That cannot be addressed with any ideas of dimensions or any of that stuff. And the Einsteiners flat out say that cannot exist. But the Tesla system works on that principle.
Okay, so
that's how the Tesla telluric transmitter works. It's very simple. If you're transmitting into the ground, what are you going to ground to?
Well, I have no idea.
The moon?
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
What are you going to ground to if you're transmitting into the ground? So you can't have two terminals, because there's nothing to connect the other terminal to. So he came up with a monopolar system that's self-referencing. It finds its own reference point.
Okay, yeah. So constantly
it finds its own reference point. It works against that reference point. Now, what we consider reference Earth or ground is not reference anymore, because the reference is taken from another point in counter space. And then you can push against that. It's like me pushing against this desk without my chair going backwards.
Oh, and that's just
Yeah, he accomplished that electrically. He didn't understand it. So it took me to figure out that that's what was going on. Tesla did not understand that he had devised a monopolar electric technology.
So was there a eureka moment for you? Was it that time, when you were transmitting through the ground to your friends?
It took about 30 years after that.
So a bit of time.
Well, I did not have that theoretical knowledge then.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough. There was 3 books I was studying at the point of going from the high school into the Navy. One of them related to what the Navy was doing. Another one related to substation work, circuit breaker design and all that type of stuff, vacuum tubes, plasma type stuff. And then a third one was also power line and substation, and it dealt with these exotic waves that flow inside transformers that there's no theoretical basis for. So I learned a type of mathematics that is not normally available in the education system, and it gave me the edge on it.
Yeah.
So when my lab got destroyed in San Francisco, I had gathered a few pieces of debris, and I was lucky enough that the coil that I had used to do the experiments in high school was there intact.
Okay.
And I had learned about Tesla by then.
Yeah.
And was thrown back by the incredible genius of this guy, and the fact that I had felt, like everybody else, that I knew everything about electricity and there wasn't anything left to learn. After I read that biography, Prodigal Genius, by J.J. O'Neill, I realized that was all wrong.
Yeah, you were still...
No, it's wide open.
Yeah.
It was wide open, and I was at the doorstep of it.
So you'd never heard of Tesla?
No, never heard of Tesla, even though I had independently invented telluric transmission.
Yeah, so great minds think alike. Just jumping ahead a bit, do you feel perhaps that you could actually die. You know, I'm not saying you're going to die, and all your work would die with you, and
Oh, there's no interest in any of this.
yeah,
This is just for my own gratification.
yeah,
So, I'm writing a whole book on alternating current theory here. I've been beating my brains on it for a month. No one has ever gone to this mathematical depth in the alternating current theory,
yeah. So,
but nobody's interested
Yeah.
in it.
no. How can you write longhand? You know, like because you don't use email and
No, there's no need to.
no. Okay.
It's meaningless to me.
Yeah. So you kind of not modern in a way, if you see what I mean.
I'm somebody from the 16th or 17th century,
He's just got a lot of electricity.
so I'm not from this world.
Yeah.
If you go back to the time of Martin Luther or any of those
Yeah.
people, that's the world that I come from.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
the world I was raised in.
Yeah.
The European ancestors, the whole thing. This
Yeah.
is, to me, this whole episode is it's all a Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Every time I walk out that door, it's horror.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you grabbed Newton or Leibniz or anybody off the street, back then, and put them in a time machine and dump them out here on the street corner, their brains would explode on the sheer violent insanity of what's around them.
Mm. Yeah, it's not too good, is it, really, out there?
Yeah, and then when you live in the forest and you come back out, then it all becomes glaringly evident.
So, yeah, but were there quite large gaps in your research? Because if you're living in the forest or in the desert, it's going to be very difficult to carry on with it, isn't it?
No, it's easy it's all mathematical.
Oh, okay, of course.
That's all mathematics.
So, were you always looking...
See, like this is all, this stuff that I derived most of this by experiments in the front seat of my car.
Of course, yeah, the car, sorry. Yeah.
Right.
Forgive me if I sometimes...
Well, when I didn't have the car, I used park benches in coffee shops.
Yeah.
So this stuff that's out on the internet now that's attributed to Borderland actually was long before I got involved with Borderland. That's the stuff I was writing on park benches in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco.
So tell me a bit about Borderland. How did you get involved with them in the first place?
Well, they got involved with me. So what was going on at the time is there was forces in action to make the Integratron work.
And what is the Integratron?
That's a long story.
Is it possible to say it in a paragraph?
The Integratron it was as a rejuvenating device.
Oh, so you can make people younger and stuff like that?
Yeah, it would regenerate their body. They have the same vitality they had at birth.
Okay.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly. Now, I have no information this way or that way, how any of that would come about. I was never allowed to get to the point where I could at least start to get the thing operating. There's major insurmountable obstacles that I have to get around. But I'm good at that. But to get the thing running as he had envisioned, there was too much lost information, but it was karmic.
Yeah.
In other words, there was a force driving this to happen.
Yeah.
And so I rode that force, and I figured out enough about it, but at any rate, that's when Tom Brown showed up.
Okay.
So Tom Brown showed up because the Integratron is like a mecca. People come from all over to work at it, and we'd leave it open. We have open to the public a certain number of hours every day, and then people would bring in like equipment or key pieces of information.
Yeah.
Great. It was really great experience. And then I built one of these first cosmic, what I called the cosmic induction things there.
Yeah.
The first one was at RCA, but this was the second one.
Okay.
So I still had enough RCA equipment that I had stored at the shipyard that I put the thing together that made these fractal discharges and stuff that's now out on the internet that you can see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was all started there at the Integratron. Well, and then the persecution from this group or multiplicities of it.
Yeah.
There's two organizations in particular that seem to be at the root of it. One is called Greenpeace.
Okay, the environmental.
Yeah, they're not environmental. They're a Soviet spinoff from the Khrushchev era. They're an anti-Navy organization.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the purpose of Greenpeace is to harass the United States Navy.
Okay.
And to perform surveillance and do all kinds of, communist-related things. They're enemies of the United States. Vowed enemies almost. And then another one is Commonweal, which is a neo-pagan organization trying to bring a goddess demon into a controlled entity on the earth, and they're a spin-off of Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Global Initiative.
Yeah, you do realise that this can sometimes sound, to the normal sort of layperson in the street, kind of quite out there, sort of thing.
Well, that's their problem.
Okay.
I'm not into entertaining them. You're here to get the far out stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we didn't come to watch you do your dishes.
Right, yeah. You hear me talk about, the problems with my car.
Well, actually, do you have problems with your car?
Well, the problem is it's getting hard to find anything for it anymore.
Yeah.
And now I have to take evasive measures on that to try to whatever. And now that makes the value of the car so high that it's risky to drive it.
Yeah. So you're almost scared to take it out in case some idiot bangs you,
Yeah.
and then you.
And all my spares are gone.
Can you not? If it's done 3/4, well, you said it's done 3/4 of a million miles. Can you just write to Toyota and say, they might give you a free car?
I don't want another car. They don't make those cars anymore.
Yeah. So why specifically that car? Why does
it's just everything about it. It's right.
Yeah.
It's the best car that Toyota ever made.
Yeah.
It's one of the nicest looking cars made. Period.
Yeah.
It's built like a piece of military equipment. On top of that, it's converted.
What? Oh, you've converted it.
It's converted it to be off-road vehicle, tactical. It's got multiple voltages, 12 and 24.
Okay.
The entire engine and everything's all hand built. Everything. All the rings, bearings, seals, the gears, everything's all hand built.
So it's one of a kind. It's a unique on planet Earth.
It's one of a kind.
Yeah.
It's up until recently, as long as I had the shipyard available to me, it was always, under a military maintenance program.
Yeah.
In other words, you don't wait for things. There's a certain number of hours.
Yeah.
You replace this bearing, you replace these brushes, or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I go places in that thing where if the car takes a crap on me, well, what am I going to do? I'm 100 miles in the wilderness. I can't have any problems. There can't be anything like that.
Is there anyone that's helped you that you still in touch with? That you're still friends? Yeah, they're all dead.
It's all gone.
Yeah.
Lockwood's dead. Reynolds is dead. Everybody's dead. It's all gone. There's nobody interested in this stuff anymore. I can't go back to any RCA buildings. I can't go back to there's all the surplus guys are gone. The shipyards, it's all gone.
Yeah. But there are people interested, but they may not be for the right reasons. Because when we first heard about you, we were in Los Angeles earlier this year, and these two guys from Anonymous, the sort of hacktivist collective, they were raving about you. You said, you've got to find this guy, you've got to go out, and he's in the desert, you've got to go and find him and do a story on him. So, and they were really into it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think people think you are something what you are not. And what you are doing.
Well, that's what we got started with was this whole free energy thing.
Exactly.
They want to put me, that I'm free energy, this or that. Well, that's not really what I'm into. I was for a while.
Yeah.
When Peter Lindemann was involved with Borderland, he had gathered together a couple of people that were doing experiments, and then I did some experiments, and in my mind. So you can call this my theory, is that energy can be synthesized, and I've seen it.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the devices in my car exhibits that property.
So what do you mean by synthesized?
You make it like, apple pie.
Okay.
Apple pie is not a thing in its own. It's made out of apples, and it's made out of, grain, and it's made out of sugar, stuff like that. So energy is the same thing.
Okay. And you can...
So you should theoretically be able to assemble it from its constituent parts.
Okay. So you figure out, say for example, it was made of apples and sugar and...
Yeah, well, it's made out of magnetism and dielectricity and time.
Yeah.
That's what it's made out of. Electrical energy is made out of those three things.
And you can synthesize them. Yeah.
By mixing them together.
And then that's why the free energy thing kind of came about.
Well, the free energy thing is like a holy grail, it's been in everybody's mind
since the year dot.
There's meetings of the American Institute of Electrical Engineers in the 19th century, where at the end of the meeting, the guy expressed confidence that they were going to have a self-sustaining electrical system within a year or two. Wow. And these were wingnuts.
Yeah.
These were, some of the top level electrical scientists in the country, if not the world.
Do you think
Tesla was there? Steinmetz was there. They were all together having a party.
Yeah.
One of these AIE meetings, I forgot what year and month it was. It was one of the most stunning things I ever read to see there was a point where these people actually had all gotten together and were in conflict.
Yeah.
And got themselves all whipped up into some kind of like hallucinogenic or frenzy, like some kind of African native
tribal
deal, until it just flowered into this. God, the things they came up with would just curl any physicist's toenails.
So you know a fan of a physicist, are you?
Physicists are enemies of the electrical science.
Yeah.
Physicists want to control everything.
Yeah.
They want their theories to rule the universe. It's a religion, is what it is. It's destructive religion.
Yeah, rather than it's faith based rather than fact.
Well, it's all based on gobbledygook.
Yeah.
The more theories you throw on this whole quantum thing is like insanity. I mean, I've ran with nutcases on the street that's more sensible than these quantum people come up with.
So how just you brought up like 11 years on the street. What kind of, because you get different type of people who live on the street. Were you like kind of, did you beg for money or did you just forage?
No, I was never much of a beggar. I foraged.
Yeah.
So, and then there's always somebody wanted a circuit breaker box put in, or somebody needed this, or somebody needed that. In the 70s in San Francisco, it was a very cooperative effort amongst people. I had dozens of friends.
Yeah.
Dozens of friends.
Yeah.
So I always I did what was called alternating current living, where, I'd never stay in one place long enough to be noticed.
Okay.
And I had enough diversity of locations that I just kept in this dynamic flux of complete randomness.
Why did you come off the streets again? It was Borderlands, wasn't it?
No. It was just Captain Don Hughes. So he had a converted Navy ship.
Yeah.
What was going on is at the time, a friend of mine worked in the rock and roll production business.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the real heavy drug use, all that kind of stuff going on. It's not really the best neighborhood to be in.
No.
But at any rate, that's where I was stuck, and I was earning my money. And it was fun, because I'm into music and, and electronics and all that. Yeah. So I build these, power systems for these people that eliminated all the hum and interference and fixed the audio, all that kind of stuff. And, my friends were involved working with me. So it turned out to be, I didn't like this. The guy I was working for also was a drug dealer.
Oh. What kind of drugs? Just
syndicate marijuana and cocaine.
Okay.
So at any rate, the stuff didn't really do me much good. I have the kind of chemistry where I can be around that stuff. I can partake in it, but it doesn't do anything to me. It's not a big deal to me. But it's really a bad environment. But it's the way it was. That's the way it is. You got to deal with this stuff. So at any rate, two guys showed up from this. They were mechanics on this Navy ship, and they went there to get their bindle of whatever.
Yeah.
And they'd seen this big switchboard I was building for this sound production thing, and it was made out of Navy parts. It was built Navy way because that's how I do stuff.
Yeah.
And they go, we have these things on the ship. And they go, they're not working. Can you come to the ship and fix this stuff?
Okay.
So at any rate, you bet.
Yeah.
So at any rate, so I come down, and I look at the switchboard, and I go, well, that one, I don't know, not much I knew about that, but this. And then I look and I go, well, that's screwed up too. And they go, oh, can you fix that and this? And they can fix this and that and the whole thing. And then all of a sudden I'm around there all the time.
Mm.
And so the owner of the ship, Captain Don Hughes, shows up. And, I'm starting to wonder who this guy is running around in his engine room that doesn't like to talk to people. Just has the switchboard all the time.
This is you're a military ship, isn't it?
Yeah, and
you're a civilian who's got.
Well, no, it's civilian now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's civilian now. But at any rate, it's a Navy ship. The Captain Hughes just got screwed royally by the people who are working on it that wrecked one of the main engines.
Yeah.
And we're going through all that, and so he kind of started who is this guy? And I don't really like people and want to talk to people, and he's pretty standoffish, but he starts to see that I'm around, and all of a sudden all this stuff's starting to work.
Yeah.
So he gets into talking to me, and he says, well, you need a place to live. You can have a stateroom here on the ship. Okay. And he goes, I'll give you $200 a week to do whatever you want.
Right, in the 1970s?
He goes, do whatever you want, not really putting anything on you, but just keep doing what you like to do. And he was curious of what these notebooks were I carrying around all the time, and I told him about Steinmetz. And that really tripped him off.
Okay.
'Cause he went to Steinmetz High School in
Okay.
Chicago.
Oh, so
And he had a rough life too. He was a cop, a bar tender. He was a street person. This guy went through all kinds of stuff until he eventually became one of the top maritime pilots on San Francisco Bay. He was the guy in charge. He was the top guy.
yeah.
This guy ran the deal.
Yeah, you know,
The port
fish-
couldn't tell him what to do. He told the port what to do.
Okay.
So this was a good person to be allied with.
Yeah.
At any rate, he had this cocaine problem on his ship also.
Yeah.
So my job there not only was to, start overhauling the ship, but start to put pressure on the scene.
Yeah.
So I
And how
put pressure on the scene. I just have my voodoo exorcism.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah,
really stunned him. Okay, he didn't know how to react to the fact that, that I can be amongst these people but not
Yeah.
be the same thing. And over time, I managed to get the whole thing abated.
Yeah.
Get the whole thing abated. Found out, where his ship had been screwed up, and get the whole thing together. And him supporting me for I worked on that ship for 4 years. I rebuilt the entire thing, me and one other guy. The entire ship,
Yeah.
from top to bottom, including repainting the 35,000-gallon fuel tanks, the whole thing. That's where I learned about a lot of this stuff.
So what's been the longest sort of continuous
So
pit?
Captain Hughes is the one that got me off the
Yeah.
street.
Yeah.
When we got to the shipyard to have the bottom overhauled and all that, they wrecked the ship by putting it on the wrong blocking plan. Then they sabotaged the shipyard, which I told you about.
Yeah.
Then from there I went to the Integratron.
Yeah.
When I went to the Integratron, something happened. Lockwood brought me to Los Angeles to start introducing me to the key people of that era, one of which was a very famous person at his time named Bob Beck. Robert Beck or Bob Beck or Bob Beck, what do you call him? Bob Beck. He was very heavy into started the Psychotronics Association, the electronic medical movement and all that there in L.A. He picked up on things like Ruth Drown and all them left off. I don't know if you know much about radionics and
not much
that
at all.
kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm like literally the worst person at science.
Yeah, well, this is science you won't hear about.
Yeah, so I might be good at it.
Yeah, so these people all got punished. But at any rate, Bob Beck and his crowd, it was agreed upon that, let's have Eric show up at one of our monthly meetings. So I show up, and they have everybody introduce themselves, and I introduce myself, and I say I'm engineer working for the Integratron. Everything came to a screeching halt at that point. Everyone turned around and looked at me like Jesus had just arrived.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And how did that?
Whole thing stopped.
Yeah.
I was, pulled up to the front. Chalkboards and pens or whatever was all provided me, and I went and gave totally, out of my head, gave a 2.5-hour lecture on the whole operation, and that is what changed my life. Then all of a sudden I became famous.
Yeah. You were some genius from the...
So that supported all that. And then when the Integratron crashed and Borderland embezzled the funds to move the laboratory, then I went back to work at the shipyard.
Yeah.
So what I had done had saved the shipyard from being destroyed. When I came back, it was like the return of General MacArthur. People came out of the offices and put their arms around me. I was already famous for blacking out the town of Richmond with one of my experiments. So the port, and everybody were so happy to have Eric back to kick ass. And no one else likes playing with salt water and 12,000-volt power lines, but Eric does. So we can get him back in here before the place blows up underneath our feet, which is getting ready to happen. So I went back to work there for about 4 years and built a lot of stuff. But because I was working as an electrical engineer, it didn't give me much time to do any research. So that all took a crap.
Yeah.
And then what was left of the laboratory was scattered to the winds.
So what year are we talking now?
1988.
Okay.
Yeah. So by about 90, they sank the ship that we built on the first job, and everything was just going to hell. So I quit. My partner, David Franklin, and myself decided we were going to go back to the RCA station was still active in Bolinas. We were going to put our own station in there. We started doing that and just drop out. Just drop out. We'd made enough money there that, we'd just eat out of garbage cans and get on welfare and just, build our own thing. And I got, reconnected with the station and all that. And then the syndicate had the whole place destroyed.
Well,
They had the county SWAT team come in with bulldozers and destroy it. It was like Waco.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah.
Why?
They were hoping, to confront me and kill me, but I don't work like that.
Yeah.
So, at any rate, what the voodoo did was nearly destroyed the town after they destroyed the station.
Explain. Could you?
Elemental water.
Oh, just got into the water table.
They got into the antenna system, and when they screwed the antenna system up, it caused that etheric disruption.
Yeah.
And it rained for over a month, destroyed the entire water system of the town, knocked the power out for weeks. Nobody could get in and out. And every time I came back to town afterwards, the event would duplicate itself somehow.
So you were like the lightning conductor. Or
Yeah,
something.
I was the catalyst for that
the
energy.
Rain Man.
Yeah, the Rain Man.
So you mentioned etheric force. Is that how you pronounce it? What is that? Could you explain?
No, nobody really knows what it is,
But
and it does its own thing.
Okay, but what do you think?
I don't.
How could you describe it then?
I don't.
So it's just this thing that's there.
Yeah, it's things that you can't describe.
It's indescribable. Do you think it would ever be able to describe it, or is it just unable to? It's very nature.
Well, none of it's nothing. There's nothing known about electricity or any of that type of stuff.
Yeah, but
Nothing
people think they know, like because
they know the fairy tale they're told. That's why they think they know.
If you look at from people's point of view, they like I go to over there and I switch a light switch, it comes on, it comes off.
Yeah,
that's electricity to most people, isn't it? That's what they think it is.
Yeah, they don't even have a conception of it, really.
No, so
it's too abstract.
Yeah. Well, what's the worst time you have? What's the worst incident you've ever electrocuted yourself? Can you remember?
Well, there was one. I got a bad one when I was in about the 5th grade, hand-to-hand shock off of like a 450-volt power supply. So that taught me real clear. It burned in my mind that you don't hold on to two things when you're working with electricity.
So when this...
Then the next one is in high school, somehow I spaced out and I forgot to turn the switch off on the 15,000-volt power supply that was part of one of my experiments. And I went and I grabbed onto the terminal, and fire was shooting out of my shoes and my hand was smoking, and I figured that was it, But the arcing, because I always had heavy rubber shoes, I was like Tesla, I just made sure to get shoes that had insulation and had a rubber mat, but the 15,000 volts was arcing through it, but intermittently. So during the intermission, I threw myself away, and
so there was flames coming out of your shoes. That's not a good day, is it?
Yeah, and then another one was a switchboard explosion. Yeah. The explosions actually can be worse than the shocks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because they're Hiroshimas.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, so at any rate, it turned my glasses into sunglasses because of the copper on them, and shortened my beard. And my shirt looked like Swiss cheese.
So have you, this is a bit of a personal question, so you can tell me to piss off and all that, but have you ever had a long-term relationship with, a significant other, like a partner, like a love partner sort of thing?
Not really.
No,
it doesn't happen in feral life.
No. Did you regret that?
No. Actually, it's a great advantage.
Could you explain?
Well, then you don't get pulled down.
No. Yeah, you can
do whatever you want.
So how, if you had to say on a scale of 1 to 10, how driven are you?
What do you mean?
Driven in your work? Because it seems like you're incredibly driven, because it's like almost every bad thing that could happen to a person has happened to you, and you just keep going.
Well, it doesn't matter how many times you whip a coyote, it's still going to eat rats.
Okay.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
That's just, it's not like it used to be. I really have lost pretty much all interest. I don't have the energy I have to build complete radio stations from scratch anymore. Materials aren't available anymore.
How come? Just they've stopped
producing.
It's not
available.
Yeah.
So like my car, there's nothing available anymore. You can't even get simple things. You can't buy stuff that works anymore.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing is collapsing.
Yeah.
So there's nothing there. It's like being on another planet.
Mm. So when these guys who we were talking about earlier approached you, were you excited? Were you happy that someone had...
Who were you talking about?
The ones who made that documentary, David and them, Mohammed and them, when they said we're going to raise some money on the internet.
Well, I don't know. The whole thing is I was against a lot of it right from the beginning because I wasn't part of it.
Yeah.
So what had happened is there's some crazy guy I know over there in Lone Pine. Usually so much of a nutcase, I can hardly even visit him, but he's into the same stuff I am, so I go over there, and I'm trying not to get this guy tweaked out on me, and he's all tweaked out over something, and he's going, you got to see what's going on the internet. Your name is all over the internet. Your name's all over the internet. They're this and that, and I look, and I find all this stuff is being done in my name, and I don't even know about it.
And how did you feel about that?
Well, I didn't like that at all.
Oh.
And then I started receiving reports from other people that, things are being put out that said that I said it, that I didn't ever say at all.
Yeah.
So then I made a point of contacting this guy and told him that I didn't like that. First I tried to write him a letter and it got sent back. And then I told him, if you're going to be doing anything in my name, you better come out here in Lone Pine. We better talk about what's going on. This guy, he shows up, and draws me out of the bushes. I didn't want to be involved with people. Okay, he draws me out of the bushes. I'm a bush person. I'm considered 100% disabled. I'm a senior citizen and all that. I'm not into getting wrapped up into a lot of stuff, but he had enticed me in that I'm going to help you get a place where you can work on your stuff. Yeah. And I fell for it.
Yeah. Why particularly here?
So what it evolved into is we're still trying to get all the facts together on this, but we have a pretty thorough investigation. The facts have all been documented into a whole report.
Yeah, but they accused you of being
well, of course, they all throw their liar. A liar always throws back the very thing they're doing.
Yeah.
So when they came out here and all that, they were very abusive to me.
Yeah. So, in what way?
Violently abusive to me.
Well, they were pushing you around? And
just like would snap at me viciously, extremely argumentative. They would break things. They'd put things places where they weren't supposed to be.
Yeah. But do you think that could just be a case of you like to be in your own space, and here comes some two clumsy guys from the internet, and they're clumsy?
Well, if you're clumsy, acknowledge it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're going to keep doing something negative and get me to the point where I have to be insistent that you stop doing something that, is counterproductive or negative, is going to make something break, and then you lash out at me afterwards, well, then something's wrong. Then what I had determined was I was in the way of their party, and what they did is they went off and had a meeting where they decided they were just going to jettison me, and somebody had got hip to that.
Okay.
And alerted me to it. Plus I'm psychic on that anyway. But it didn't work like that. There was something went wrong, and that was Aaron Murakami. He showed up.
Yeah, and because they don't like him, do they?
They don't like him at all because he figured the whole thing out and took them on.
Yeah. But
otherwise they would have got away with it.
Yeah, but they say that he came and swooped and took you from them. That's their kind of viewpoint for it.
Well, that's the liar is always inverts. Anytime, all you have to do with that type of liar is multiply anything they say by -1. It's that simple. It's beautiful. You don't have to use any complicated sines or cosine functions or logarithms or Bessel functions or probability tables. It's easy. -1.
And there you are, the truth.
Reverse.
Yeah. So how come you're still here, though? If this is the building that...
Well, I don't know. So, I mean, well, here's what I've done, okay, is I formed an organization, research organization. They had attempted to hijack the organization. It's not successful. So the organization is trying to hold itself together. But as far as I understand, I have until the end of the year, and then this is all just going to be pulled out from underneath me. So I'm taking measures for that now.
So where are you going to go on to? Obviously, if you don't want to tell us,
Well, I'm just going to go back to the bushes. In fact, that's what I'm going to do as soon as you leave anyway.
Yeah,
you're just going to go back in the bushes.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I will lose the last of what I have.
But why don't you just stay till the end of the year?
Well, I'm using the place to the end of the year.
Yeah.
For whatever, but it's too expensive to keep this place heated.
Yeah.
I don't like living inside. It's not healthy.
No.
The constant, boom boxes and roaring devil trucks and the diesel fumes and it's not, I'm living in my cell.
Yeah.
That's not the way I live. It's not healthy.
Do you sleep in here?
Yeah.
It is a bit soul-like, isn't it? It's very soul-like. It's like, get to your desk and work, then get to sleep. Oh, yeah, there's the bed.
Right. Well, it's quiet in here.
Yeah.
And then there's supposed to be, like I had at Landers, there's supposed to be a whole row of racks back here that have all the signal processing equipment and the oscilloscopes, but I have to find all that stuff and build it again, and it's a slow process.
So, because from what I understand, and I could be completely wrong, they raise like all together because someone put in some money from their house, like $90,000. So, where's the money gone? Do you know where the money's gone?
Well, a lot of money was spent on trying to get this place fixed up.
Okay.
And then the contractor botched the whole thing.
Okay.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Right down to this is not soundboard, this is ceiling tile. So it can't be kept clean.
Okay.
They forgot to put the RF screening in, so we had to put another wall over the existing walls to put in the RF screening.
Okay. Is this like a Faraday cage? Then?
Well, Faraday cage is a misused term, but
but
it would be...
You see what I...
Yeah, it's a screen room.
Yeah.
Screen room.
So basically you got the worst contractor in mid-Nevada.
Yeah,
used
the
it.
worst.
Yeah.
All the plumbing leaks, the hot and colds backwards.
Yeah.
Things aren't finished, they're crooked, the workers stole tools. It's just welcome to America.
Yeah.
That's just the way business is now.
So they just left. One day they upped and left. And
Well,
left
they can only
you.
spend so much money on them, so that turned out to be a big chunk of money, about, probably to the tune of $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the building had to be initially purchased to
the
whatever level.
Yeah.
It's not purchased, but, that had to be, payment thing had to be, that wasn't cheap. And then on the internet, $30,000 was raised, which basically cleaned up the rest of the deal, painted the front of the building, got the equipment that I have now to do the Tesla coil work with, the spare car, that type of stuff, get everything, paint, whatever, desk, all that kind of stuff, get this place. But it's still, $25,000 is still needed for the electrical system, and another $10,000, $15,000 to finish the front office, there and all that. And my associate in this organization and a good friend of mine does this kind of work, so he's just going to come here. And he came in and he put all this together after they messed it all up.
Okay.
So he's just going to, continue with me on this.
Yeah.
But at this point, I don't want to invest too much in here just to have it taken away.
Yeah.
We got another operation going somewhere else on the San Andreas Fault, which is, which is kind of where I want to do something. I've got a government thing going where I'm trying to establish my own thing here, which I call Area 52.
Could you explain?
It's a secret thing.
Okay, so you can't explain.
Yeah, I can't explain it. It relates to the Telluric project.
Okay.
There's massive facilities that have become abandoned in this Area 51, has a perimeter around it, and there's abandoned telephone facilities and other things, so I'm working it out with a government relationship that's made available for my research.
But just to, actually, there's a couple of things. One is about the earthquake detecting
This
machine.
is the earthquake thing.
Yeah. And so could you explain that a little bit?
Well, the earthquake thing is based on the fact that earthquakes generate radio frequency signals, but only major earthquakes generate them. So that's perfect. So if there's a way to isolate these signals and to detect, isolate them, and filter them, and that's what I had at Landers. Is I had a system, proven working system for advanced seismic warning, but that's all destroyed.
Because you could become a very rich man with a system like that.
No, you can't. You can end up a very dead person, and that's part of the reason why Landers is destroyed.
Yeah. But why
you cannot have any electrical theory or operation in the Einstein reality.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do anything with earthquakes, it has to be in the realm of physics. It has to be mechanical.
Yeah.
As soon as you say anything electrical, they're out to get you.
Yeah.
That's the problem I'm having.
Yeah, it's very...
So now the whole thing is secret. Okay, originally it wasn't that secret because I wasn't going to portray it as an earthquake detecting system.
Oh, what were you going to call it?
Well, it's just simply the Telluric system in general.
Yeah.
It's just a system in general, as I also have communications ideas for it, which also tend to, like the earthquake thing, have a way of wanting to become restricted information because the users of the communication system will want it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now when Muhammad got involved in the thing, now it's all tops. Now nothing can be said about anything at all.
Yeah.
He wrecked it for everybody.
But they watching the video again and again, you know, you haven't seen it, so it's difficult. But they said, you know, you got to a point, and then you turn around and said, well, I'm going to go away for 3 months now and give some lectures. I've got to write a lecture. That's, yeah, and it's almost like the work got to a certain point.
There's never possible to do any work here. Yeah. There's no materials. There's no money. There's no equipment.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly.
This is the work I'm doing here. This is why I came here.
But
okay, I came here. The original I made it very clear is that I'm not really into a lot of this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, it's that the situation at Landers has left me 100% disabled.
Yeah.
On top of that, it's basically, it's no way I can function in society anymore because of the psychological damage that's been done by all this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's been determined is that I'm disabled and I get disability out of it.
Okay.
And that's, how I keep alive in the car.
Yeah. So there's basically...
So the situation, I made that very clear.
Yeah.
Very clear that there is going to have to be some kind of massive recuperative effort to get me to the point. In fact, on top of that, I'm 61 years old. Okay, I don't have all that get up and go that I did with 19, to stay up for 30 or 40 hours, building entire radio stations from scratch. That's not happening anymore. Right now, my research is mainly along the lines of the Pythagoras stuff, which is so far removed from anything that anybody can think about today that there's no point in even talking about it.
Okay.
But it's heavily involved with music.
Yeah, the back.
Yeah.
Or Bach, sorry.
Yes. So at any rate, that is why this room is built. There's supposed to be a keyboard here. There's supposed to be signal analyzing and synthesizing racks here, which is also tied in with the earthquake thing, because that also works on a musical basis.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was the idea, was to put that together, and then if the materials could be found, like these big AM radio transmitters, then was to try to duplicate the thing I did with the musical discharges and all that type of stuff. But that's a long, drawn-out process.
So is it, could you say this, that you kind of not get bored with stuff, but you kind of think, well, I've figured that one out, so I'm going to try and figure this out. Is that kind of...
Well, I have my line of research.
Yeah.
So what it is I've done all this lightning generating stuff back, in the days when I was young and all that, and it was easy because RCA and whatever, and I really want to do it again. I'd like to get that thing back together, but I've done that.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, I have to have, electrical system, I have to have all the radio frequency coils and all that type of stuff, and it's not at that point yet.
Yeah.
So I don't have the Pythagorean thing here other than I have the way to listen to the music, but what happened is when I found out that these people had taken me for a ride, okay, and that this whole thing was a trick, I drove away.
Yeah.
I went back in the bushes, and that was it. I had no more interest in anything. Okay, I couldn't even get out of the car.
Yeah. Because it must be like you said,
just completely. I'd had it. So at any rate, here now I have a commitment to produce a lecture, and it has to be, by my standards, it has to be quality. It's got to be, new material, whatever. So I didn't know. I was going to go on some preform thing I'd already wrote and elaborate on it. So I put out he put out a poll. What do you want Eric to talk about? Well, everyone wanted me to talk about my 4-quadrant theory of AC.
Okay.
So what I did is I started to go back through my past writings, and and I go, well, people aren't going to understand this. It's all math, whatever. And so I got together with Aaron, and then we got a collection of pictures together, and that helped. Then what I did is I wrote on the pictures, and then I gave this lecture. Well, in the process of putting this lecture together and writing all this stuff here, it turned into a whole book.
Okay.
And I started finding out all this stuff that, I started carrying on my old mathematics research, and it started covering more and more things, and now that book's done. Another book's in progress.
So you're very hardworking.
I'm not laying around. I can't lay around.
Yeah.
I'm not like that. So at any rate, everything I do also has alternate functions. So the AC book, of course, sprang out of the lecture, which was the purpose. But this particular book I'm putting together now has something to do with a certain relationship with what the power company's doing and all that.
Yeah.
So before I get involved in any type of governmental action or any type of stuff dealing with high-level things, I have to be a complete expert in the field.
Yeah. Yeah, before you wade into
So
it.
at any rate, no one really knows where this mathematics comes from. They use it half-heartedly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misinterpretations of what's going on, and it's causing a problem for me in that I can't get the proper electricity to run my equipment anymore.
Okay, so electricity's changed. Or
The power company is turning the whole electrical system inside out.
Why?
Well, this is what has to be documented and analyzed. And it's most people regard it from a conspiratorial standpoint.
Okay, do you?
Possibly.
And what?
Because it's so weird.
Yeah, and what would be the conspiracy?
Somehow it just creates so much electromagnetic pollution that it's almost like they want electromagnetic pollution. So what it does is it has incredibly negative response on my instrumentation.
Okay.
That's the complication.
Yeah.
The other complication is what's being called three-phase power is not always three-phase power anymore because they're changing the connections in the system, and you don't get three-phase, and it's not only causing a problem with my equipment, but it's causing problems with everybody's equipment.
Yeah.
There's no ground fault protection,
Okay.
so the system is extremely dangerous.
Okay.
The high voltage wires and low voltage wires are now connected together, bypassing the transformer at the neutral terminal, which is even more dangerous.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
It's destabilizing the entire power grid.
Yeah.
And it leaves it open for enemy EMP attack.
Yeah. So it's just
It's just right now what it is well, it's actually simple to explain. When you plug into the wall outlet, okay, it's got like a ground pin on it, right?
Yeah.
Well, it used to. Well, now you notice how these things are all starting to change around. At any rate, it used to have a ground pin on it. When it did have a ground pin on it, like this thing here, when I put my hand on this, okay, that metal wire goes into that metal ground wire and through that metal pipe, and then it goes into the center tap of the transformer. It comes out both sides to all the wires in the pipe, and the ground rods, and it goes to everyone else's wire in their outlet, and it stops at the transformer.
Okay.
So when I put my hand on this chassis and that system, I am in contact with that metal.
Yeah.
All of it.
Oh.
It just happens to be that the potential at this point is neutral, so there's no difference. I'm not getting shocks or it's not making interference. Nothing's arcing. It's neutral because the building ground is connected, and we're all part of that. That's what this screen's for, is to establish that. So now what they've done is they've taken the high voltage neutral and the low voltage neutral and jumpered them at the transformer.
Okay.
So now when I put my hand on this, it doesn't end at the transformer. Now all the high voltage wires on the pole all the way back to the substation are now in metallic contact with my power amplifier.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
So you could.
And next is now the substations are getting connected that way. So now your hand is hooked to every piece of metal that is standing on a pole or tower as far as your mind can imagine. Now how do you like that?
Not much. Sounds pretty dangerous to me.
Now, who in the hell is trying to pull this off, and why?
Yeah, money. Was it cheaper to do it that
No,
way?
it's more expensive.
Um,
It requires more material.
Maybe they just fancy blowing some people up. Just
I don't know, but at any rate, I have been commissioned to get to the bottom of it.
Well, that's
and
you're
to make
the man.
a presentation.
Yeah.
Right. Official presentation on the matter, and find out what's going on. There are there's a government official that wants to know why this is. It's part of the Area 52 project. The guy, wants to know, well, why? He keeps asking me why. Why do people do this to you? Why is this wrong? Why is that? And I go, well, these are difficult things to explain. I can't just, it's like trying to explain how electricity works. This stuff's all wrapped in theory and mystery.
Yeah, and to explain it to someone like me, you might as well be talking to...
Well, I did.
Yeah.
I just did explain it to you.
Yeah, you did it quite well.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually. But you have to explain it simply.
Yeah.
Yeah, like not with the equations and the theory.
Yeah, but the equations in theory are going to, that's how I prove it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
but,
then I have to do experiments.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is because I've got bogus three-phase here, I cannot do three-phase experiments in my very own laboratory, even though I'm paying for a three-phase service.
So how are you going to rectify that?
Well, then I have to go to another building here, left over from the old mining days and railroad days. It does have a proper three-phase service.
Yeah, like old, because
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll talk to the guy. He's the owner of this building.
Yeah.
And explain to him, that I need to do some experiment. He already knows about this. So
yeah.
At any
so
rate,
that's what I was going to say. What do you have much contact with the people in town?
Oh no, I just this is all covert.
Yeah.
You just see the cars like the Batmobile. It comes out and it disappears back into its hole. Nobody knows what's going on here.
Does you drive around with the antennae on? Yeah, it's not that undercover then, is it?
No, it's not that undercover, but you don't know what's going on and you don't see it. You don't know when I'm here. You don't know when I'm not here. You don't know what I'm doing here.
Well, I couldn't find it. I kind of knew it must be.
I picked this place deliberately because it has a certain amount. It's something invisible about it.
Very much so.
Yeah.
It has kind of got its own cloaking field.
It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's like a stealth building.
Right, it just doesn't exist.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
We just...
I was driving around.
Yeah, I was watching you drive back and forth. I thought, that would give you enough instructions, but...
No, you did, because...
Yeah,
and we had the GPS. It kind of got us here, and I thought it's got to be around here, but then...
Yeah, well, the sign is what you were looking for across the street.
Yeah.
But at any rate, you found it, so...
Yeah. So, just, again, don't go... angry with me, but I have to ask this question because there was this big accusation of crystal meth and abuse. So, could you address that?
Well, it's bullshit.
Yeah. So
what Muhammad did is while he was recording me when I didn't know it, and listening to me talk about my life. Well, those 11 years on the street, everything passed through my body.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair enough, isn't it? Yeah.
Rock and roll days, same thing, and Landers, my station, the property, I was overrun with the whole meth crowd. They ran me out of my own place, so if I was going to go back to, my station, I knew it was going to be destroyed. The workload is incredible when you have your own Navy base. You ever try keeping your own Navy base going?
Not lately, no.
The equipment gets to be about 20, 30 years old. You got to climb all your own telephone poles and the whole thing, so,
Yeah, that was another.
So I had to. So I just. That's what I did.
Yeah.
It made no difference to me. There's no addiction or anything. I just drive away, and I don't want any other place than that. I have no interest in that.
Yeah, you just used it as a tool when you needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really, really went to town on that. Like they made you out. You were like the crazy meth head who's gonna tweak all over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do I act like a meth head? I still have my teeth, don't I?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. And you got very good teeth, probably.
Yeah. Well, I don't. They're real fucked up.
Oh,
but
well, they look all right. Well, they're not meth mouth, have you? You haven't got.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, the 11 years on the street destroyed half my teeth.
Yeah.
But the fact is because I live outdoors and oftentimes only a living food diet is I can regenerate my teeth.
Okay.